without further ado, we do have a great guest this week, and someone I've probably been on my list, kind of like last week with Jeff Fab, been on the Coyle list for a long time. I got him, Acey Slade. He's played with everybody, but he's one of these guys, Acey, that it seems like everybody in every band knows him, but everyone loves Acey. He has that energy, that, you know, like one of the good guys, but also like the real good guys. Like, he's not just a nice guy who hangs out in the background. He's out and about. He's always doing something, and always doing something positive. And like a lot of people who I'm friends with in this industry, often I don't really know their story. I thought I had an idea of it, and then I get to bring them on the show, and then I get to, oh, that happened. Oh, really? It's always really fascinating. So I'm glad to finally get Acey's story. I don't know if he's told it in other places. I'm sure he has to some degree, but we do it the way the X-Man does it. Okay, the only way we do it here. So without further ado, please check out this conversation with the incredible, the punk rock goth king, Mr. Acey Slade. Thank you so much for taking your time to be on the show. We've been talking about this for a long time. You might have been on my original master list. I have to go back to double check it, but I'm sure you were on there.
Cool. And now here I am.
Yeah, well, sometimes it takes some time, but you are one of the people that, like, when you look at your resume, it's kind of insane. Because I think people like myself and so many people have been on the show, people listening to the show, everyone's just trying to like survive or carve out a career or find a way to find a place where you can have some consistency. And it's like trying to make a living in the world of punk rock is probably one of the more difficult avenues, right? It's not like you're doing in some rock radio sellout band like my band. This with that being said, you joined up pretty early on with some pretty big bands or bands that were kind of taking off and doing some cool things. But anyway, I just wanted to say it's really a pleasure to have you here, because I think a story like yours and a journey like yours is something really to be proud of.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks,
absolutely. So you're in Jersey, all right, New Jersey. You've chosen to be there. I know you're from Pennsylvania. Just how did you end up living in New Jersey?
Well, through Brooklyn, just like everybody, it's like, 25 years ago, I moved to Brooklyn, and my heart's still in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
I miss it very, very, very much.
Which part of Brooklyn?
I was in Park Slope, then I was in Bed-Stuy, then I was in those are the two main places, were Park Slope and Bed-Stuy.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Good spots?
Yeah, I like both of them for different reasons. I mean, I was in Park Slope and then got priced out of there, and then went to Bed-Stuy and didn't really so much get priced out of there as much as I started playing for the Misfits, and they're in Jersey, and the commute was kind of intense, and you can't help but look at it's like, man, it's only 50 miles. Why is it taking me 2 or 3 hours?
Oh, I know.
Yeah. And then you also look at, like, you visit your friends in Jersey and they have a 2-bedroom apartment, and it's like a proper 2 bedrooms. Whereas, like, in Brooklyn, a 2-bedroom apartment is like a tiny 1-bedroom that has a walk-in closet. You know what I mean? That's what they consider a 2-bedroom. So I edged my way out here, and boy, I just miss the community, and I miss being able to walk down the street and see like-minded musicians. I like to walk. I really like walking around, and kind of miss, like, looking around and being like, oh, that's that dude, like. It'd be like hey, that's the dude from the Rapture, and maybe we would play a festival together in Australia or something. It'd be like, hey man, like, I know we're not in the same world, but we're kind of in the same world, and so I miss that a lot.
Yeah, well, Jersey. I remember, like, I lived in New Jersey till I was like 32 years old, 33 years
Hmm.
old. But I was working in New York, working in Brooklyn, and I was spending a lot of my time there. And a big thing was just, Jersey just felt a little flat. Everything
Yeah,
was
yeah.
just there's a kind of a pace, and obviously the culture of New York you can't really compare almost to anywhere in the States in general.
No, no, not at all. And that being said, Jersey's been really great to me. So I'm we it serves a purpose, and we're not moving back. We're staying in Jersey. So I don't want to sound. I didn't mean that to come across as like a Jersey hater, because I'm certainly not. But when you live in some place that's nowhere like anywhere else in America, as you said, it sets a very high bar. You know.
It's funny. So I'll go back and I'll, visit Jersey. Now I live in LA for 10 years. And it's like New Jersey has some of the most pristine suburbs I've ever seen. Like it is like you go out there, I'll go, like some family's house, and it's like zero noise, zero, there's not like a Snickers wrapper on the ground, just clean and pristine and nice lawns. It's, but you have to be ready for that speed.
Yeah, but that's I think that's part of it. You kind of nailed on something, for where I'm at in life. Like, I own my coffee company. We're opening up a coffee shop in Jersey, and when I left New York, I read some books that were written by people that were like, here's how you leave New York, like if your heart's really in it. And one of the things that I read was it said, when we leave New York, we take a piece of it with us, and we can plan it where we go. And so part of it is, I think back to when I was a kid and living in Pennsylvania. It's like maybe I can create an environment with our coffee shop, where there's young musician kids that are like, hey man, like I feel like there's something more out there than these manicured white picket fence streets, and hopefully in some way I can be that gateway, or maybe I can be that sanctuary for somebody who feels different and feels weird, and we can create that in those little manicured suburban hubs.
For sure. And that's you're gonna do that in Newark?
That's going to be in a town called Boonton, New Jersey, which is really far north. And boy, let me tell you something about beauty. Dude, that is some of the most beautiful parts of America that I've ever seen, up in that North Jersey area. Dude, it is gorgeous there. Gorgeous.
Well, we are the Garden State, all right? People think that we're just the turnpike and the
Yeah.
factories near Newark Airport, but there's New Jersey is kind of everything. It's very lush, and there's lots of rivers, and there's hiking. New Jersey kind of has everything, but people don't really know that. Who don't
No,
live there.
not at all. And you're right. It's like I get it. It's like you leave New York, the first thing you see is Edison with the big refineries, all the oil refineries and
Well,
shit.
that's
So
that's more north of Edison. That's like more like near like
yeah,
Linden and Carteret and that kind of area.
yeah, yeah. Oh, you're right. You're right. But yeah, like Union is what I was thinking of.
Yes,
Yeah,
yup, Union, exactly. Gets a
yeah.
little more. That's where E-Town, Elizabeth, that's where and Newark, not too far from there. But anyway, enough Jersey lore. You're from Pennsylvania. What part of Pennsylvania are you from?
Like southeastern Pennsylvania, town called Westchester. Well, it's technically Downingtown, but the biggest claim to fame is that's where all the Jackass videos were filmed, and
Oh no,
Bam
I've been
Margera is
there.
from there.
I've been there. I actually stayed at Bam's house a couple times, and
Oh,
what? Yeah. I had a mutual friend, and I went to that venue, The Note.
yeah, of course.
So do
Yeah.
you have a connection in any of that crew?
No, because it was funny because they're just a little bit. All that came out just a couple of years after I moved to New York, and it
Yeah.
was funny because I remember um, being on the tour bus, and someone's like, "Oh, you got to check out these videotapes, right?" And it was the original. I think it was called the CKY tapes before
Yep.
it was called Jackass, and it's like, what is it? It's like, well, it's these guys that skateboard, and I knew who 69 Eyes were, and I knew who him were. And it's like, and they listen to him and 69 Eyes, and they skateboard, they set themselves on fire. I'm like, all right, sign me up, let me check it out. And I remember watching it and being like, dude, I know that grocery store. Like, I know that strip mall. I was like, that's Westchester, PA. So it's so weird. But it is funny though. Anytime I run into Ville Vallo, he for some reason he's always like, "You're the guy who knows where Westchester is," and I'm like, "Yeah, yeah,
It's like having a like high school, like if you're coming in, you're graduating, and then that next group of freshmen come in, so you just kind of just totally miss each other.
exactly, yeah,
Yeah, that's fascinating because it's well, I guess Westchester, there's something in the water, right?
yeah." Yeah, well, there's something in the water, that's for sure. It's funny because I may have built, not built, like, but I did carpentry work, and I don't know exactly where his house is, but I did carpentry work on houses close by there, so it's very possible that some of those McMansions that are there, it's possible I worked on his house.
What all I remember is that was just like it's like in the woods, basically.
Mhm.
Like you wouldn't, if you were like seeing it from the side of the road, you wouldn't even know it was there. It's like, through some windy stuff. A lot of woods, which is, I guess letting people know don't go looking for it. Just leave them alone.
Yeah.
But anyway, shout out to Bam. He was very nice to me. So
Yeah.
but anyway, so you say you ended up moving to New York. How old were you when you moved?
I was 27. I had met a guy named Etzel Dope at the CMJ Music Conference, and I met him a year previous. And I went to CMJ to give out my demo. I was shopping my demo, handing it out, beating the concrete.
And what was the name of that band?
That band was called Vampire Love Dolls, which was with Christian Martucci of Stone Sour and Corey Taylor's band.
Yep.
Yeah, which is kind of funny. But yeah, I was there giving out my demos, trying to get a record deal, and I was at the Seven Dust showcase at Coney Island High, and Seven Dust had already gotten signed, but it was like I think the record wasn't out yet or something. But he was there, and he's like handing out it was so weird. It was like we were the only guys that were kind of like really had a hustle,
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, "Oh, you got a hustle, I got a hustle." I was like, "Yeah," and he's like, "Why don't you join my band?" Because he didn't have a full lineup together yet. And I remember he said, he goes, "You should join my band." I was like, "Well, I just recorded my demo. I'm trying to get a record deal." He goes, "No, no, no, no." He goes, "I'm putting my band together." He's like, "We're going to do 6 shows. If we don't get a record deal, I'm breaking it up because I don't want to be one of these loser bands that plays bars in New York for 3 years." Well, I kind of hurt my feelings because I was probably going on year 4, and I knew what he meant, like I was offended, but I also knew exactly what he meant. And so also I was living in Pennsylvania at the time. This was in New York. And I was like, well, let me introduce you to some guys I know, because he was new to town. And I kind of, in some ways, helped him form the band. The band did 7 shows, got their record deal on the 7th show. And then he called me back and he's like, "Hey, I got that record deal now. You sure you don't want to change your mind?" I was like, "Well, okay."
Well, I had Ed's on the show, and he was great. Like, just I think obviously he has like one of those personalities and that drive and everything, and it was just amazing to hear it from his perspective. So it's nice to hear it from your perspective as well, because I think that time period is really fascinating, right? So you have like kind of, the 90s in general are fascinating, but specifically in New York, right? Because that was probably one of the last periods where there was kind of a burgeoning underground, there was a lot happening creatively and kind of artistically, where you could have a band like Dope get a record deal and do some big things. I think that's pretty unique to that period of time.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that's really interesting too, specifically about Dope, was, and not to blow up Etzel's ego here too much, but got to give the guy credit. Like Dope, he was like, you know what? Like the band has to look like it already has a record deal, and he had a website before signed bands had websites. So people were like for you to have a website back then, I don't know what the modern equivalent to that would be, but it was like, your band has a website? Oh my God, you guys must be huge, you know? And that's what he invested in. He was like, he's like, no, like we got to look like we already have a record deal. And, and giving out sampler tapes. Nobody had given out sampler tapes yet, at least not as far as we knew. So here he is, this band giving out sampler tapes for free, and it has a URL on it, and people are like, oh my God, who the fuck is this band? You know? Amazing that back then that was such a big deal, right?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I could certainly tell from speaking with him that he was ahead of the curve in terms of just things like marketing, right? That to me, I feel like I didn't learn until years later. I feel like I'm still playing catch up with things like that. And it's always a moving target, and how we promote music and get our songs out there and get exposure is constantly something that's changing. But some people have a kind of a gift for it. You know, and then obviously you take, you know, good songs with good visuals and hopefully some charisma, and have some things that people just tend to latch onto, and also kind of right place, right time, right? That was the right time for music like that, was having a real moment, you know, if you know, in terms of industrial metal or whatever you kind of want to call it.
Yeah.
But so I know that you were there for the first 2 records, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And I mean, what was that like? I mean, you kind of, like I said, at that point, it's funny you said 27. I assumed you were going to say you were like, oh, I was 20 years old or 21. Like, you know, that's, you know, for a lot of people who are kind of having their break or having, you know, their kind of moment, usually it's a little younger. So you're kind of like a grown up, and you're kind of, it's starting to happen with that band. What was that like for you to have? Because, you know, Dope kind of shot out of a cannon to some degree, right?
Yeah. I mean, well, for me, my story is a little different than other people in that, you know, the magic thing that happened to me at 26 was I got sober. So
wow.
I was like a real bad alcoholic and drug addict, and I got sober, and almost 1 year to the day I got offered to join the band Dope, which I thought was like the universe's way of having a sense of humor. And you know, I got very lucky in many ways in that, you know, I think if there's one piece of advice that was a real big takeaway for us, was that Dope, very early on, we never took for granted that because we had a record deal that now our problems were solved. Like, we looked at it the other way, which was that, okay, like we thought we had to work hard then. Now we got to work twice as hard, because now you're in the game. There is no guarantee you're staying in the game. You know what I mean? There's no guarantees that you're staying. I was looking at the Ozfest 2000 lineup, and I look at some of the bands that have like middle billing on that, and it's like, where did they go? What happened to them? You know? And so my point being is that even though the band was you know, had a reputation for decadence and those sort of things, we always took things seriously. So I was very lucky. At 26, I get sober. 27, I get into this band. I feel like I kind of had a second take on life, if you know what I mean. So yeah, I was a little bit older, but I didn't feel older, because I feel like I fucked up like 3 or 4 years of my 20s, you know. So I never felt that old, you know.
I mean, as far as getting sober, I mean, how did that how did that help you feel, in terms of like, how are you going to approach your career or the opportunities you had? Because from the way you say it, it seems like the fact that opportunity came to you is not really coincidental to the fact that you got sober, that maybe that move in your life helped create an opportunity. Is that correct, or am I off base?
Totally. I mean, because when I was fucked up, I first of all, it got to the point where I couldn't really play very well. I couldn't even write anymore.
Yeah.
And but I certainly wasn't taking anybody else's opinion into consideration. I was very, very, very stubborn. And one of the best things that happened to me, I after I got sober, and I was kind of like, well, I'm not going to quit playing music, but I'm not going to pursue it the way that I was. Like, I was like, let me just see what the world has available to me. And I got this job just doing a shipping and receiving job, and the woman who worked there was like, listen, you're a hard worker, you work really good. She's like, but this isn't for you. She's like, this isn't what you want to do. And I said, well, to be honest with you, it's not. And she's like, well, what do you want to do? I was like, man, I want to play music. She said, so why the fuck are you here? And I was like, because I need a job. She's like, no, go play music. And I was like, yeah, but it's not that easy. Like, you got to have a record deal and manager. She's like, no, go play music. And I didn't know what that meant. And I went home and I thought about it. And I was like, all right, like, I started going on auditions for musicals. I was like, maybe I should work at Guitar Center. Maybe I should work at a studio. Like, I don't know why, but it hadn't occurred to me that it was like, just throw yourself into anything and see what might be open. Like, dude, I didn't want to be in musicals, but did I want to work as a shipping and receiving guy? No. And as a result of the one audition that I went to on the musical, I saw Etzel's girlfriend there, and she's like, Acey, what are you doing here? I was like, I don't know, but I don't want to work shipping and receiving. So she went back and told Etzel that she saw me at the audition, and that's when he was like, oh, dude, I got the record deal now. And so, yeah, I guess that's like the main thing was that I took there's an old saying, I took the cotton out of my ears and put it in my mouth,
Yeah. Dude, what's funny is almost the same thing happened to me. I was working at a temp job in an office, and my boss, kind of like a bigger, like Bill Clinton looking guy. And he's one day, and for some reason, he like took a liking to me. He's like, you don't want to do this. He's like, get out of here. Like, go do your thing. Like, he was really nice to me, but he kind of that same kind of thing of like, go pursue the thing that you want to do. And I remember it vividly, and it kind of came back to me when you mentioned that. It's so funny.
Yeah. Those people are important, man. And I guess at this point in my life, I hope I could be that person to someone else,
Well, I mean, dude, that's a big point of this show is kind of providing, up and coming artists and performers and whatever to kind of, these are like a roadmap, and everyone's roadmap is different, right? Like it's not like there's a formula to follow, but at least you can go, okay, here's a bunch of ways it worked for these individuals, right? And obviously you need a lot of things to go right, and we're all, we all have our own individual talents and pathways that kind of lead us there. But hey, if you listen to about 20, 30 of these shows, you'll see, especially people like me and you who've had second and third and fourth chapters of their careers, that I think a lot of people feel like, they start a band or they do something and it doesn't work out and they think it's over, but it's just, what are you willing to kind of go through and how many times are you willing to kind of have things not work out before you kind of get back into the arena and see what happens?
Yeah. That's tenacity, man. It's all about how many times you get back up.
Absolutely. So why did your time with Dope come to an end? Or at least at that time, back in 2002, I think that was?
Yeah. So we had lost our record deal. And, when you lose your first record deal, which, hey, man, I'm lucky enough to say that I've been in bands that lost their first record deal because, not too many people get to be in bands that get second record deals or get a second chance, And so we had lost our record deal from Sony. And at that point, like, dude, I'll never forget it. It was like the within days of us getting dropped from Sony, our agent dropped us, our manager dropped us. Dude, we were stinky, and nobody wanted our stink on them. You know what I mean?
Do you think that was because of the band and the way was it attitude? Was it what things you guys are doing? Or is it like this that? Because I know it was going on around that time. It was like new metal was kind of on the way out, and like kind of the style like bands like like Kill Switch and Shadows Fall and that stuff was kind of coming in. There was that which one was it? You think?
It was a number of things. I mean, the first thing is that they spent nearly as much money promoting our first record as they did on Mariah Carey that year. Which, I mean, why would you do that? Like, but they did. So
Hey.
we needed to, but that means we needed to make back Mariah Carey money, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So, but there's a lot of gas behind us for the second record. We go and do the second record. And, we're going into it in debt. And 9/11 happens. The video that we had just recorded, it goes to show how fucking dumb people can be sometimes. But like our music video was us playing in this like glass octagon type thing. And the kids are on the outside rocking out. And then at one point they jump through the glass and then they're like closer to the stage with us. But that was the whole thing. It was like, I guess it was like $150,000 video with all these kids jumping through glass to get on the stage. But it wasn't like a bad thing. They weren't jumping out of windows. But if you remember, and as an East Coast guy, man, people were so sensitive, and MTV just said, we're not playing this video. And MTV said they're not playing the video, which meant that radio wasn't going to play the song. So before the record even came out, we're sitting on a $150,000 music video that can't get serviced. So, and then of course the music business post 9/11 went in a real shitter anyway. So, yeah.
Yeah, it was strange. I think, Machine Head actually had a video with like buildings and stuff and some stuff like that got scrapped or got screwed up. And Slayer's record got banned in a bunch of record stores. And like, who else? I think Drowning Pool, I think their Bodies, that got taken off the radio in a bunch of places. And then almost vice versa, you had stuff like POD, like, You Feel So Alive, kind of all these like more inspirational, positive stuff, where it was viewed as positive, benefited from that time because people wanted to really push things that were in that vein, so it was a very weird time for touring. It was, and some bands just kind of caught it in the bad timing, or so a lot. I think the Slayer record, or it might have came out on 9/11. Like that was like a Tuesday. Yeah. So like, it's crazy.
Yeah. I think it was God Hates It All came out on 9/11.
Yeah. Wild. Fucking.
That did not work out too well. They even banned because we were managed by the same people that managed Sugar Ray, and that song Fly.
Yeah.
Took it off the radio. Lenny Kravitz, Fly Away, took it off the radio. Anything that had to do with flying was not allowed on the radio unless it like came out after and reflected like positively. But what's the difference? It's
Jimmy
the same,
Eat World
same lyrics.
Changed the name of their album. The album was called Bleed American, and they
who's that?
Like Jimmy Eat World had a record called Bleed American, and I think it just turned to America. I forget exactly what it might have got turned back eventually, but it was like that's how crazy it was. And they're like as uncontroversial as it gets.
Yeah.
So it was a wild time, man. But yeah, so you said all this stuff happened, band got dropped, and so you just what was your thinking? It's like, hey, get off the sinking ship?
No, it wasn't that at all, actually. No. So we had toured with Slipknot a lot. And Joey and I became good friends, and what we bonded over was our love of like metal, punk, but like hair metal, LA Sunset Strip stuff, and this was kind of before Steel Panther, and it was kind of before it was cool, but I was kind of, I don't know, the thing I didn't like about that time period was just that I felt like everybody was kind of phony, where it was like, listen, I know if I went back through your records, you'd have some Motley Crue records there. Like, why do you have to deny? Like, why do you have to downplay that shit? So I would wear like a Hanoi Rocks t-shirt, and Joey's like, dude, do you like that band? And I was like, yeah, I do. And he's like, wow, that's really cool. And I didn't expect Joey Jordison to say that, and I was like, yeah, I do. And he's like, well, I got this other band. And, it's kind of a long story, but the short version is that Joey asked me to be a part of it. Timing wise, we were recording the second Dope record.
You mean Murderdolls? The Murder Dolls.
Yeah, he asked me to be a part of Murderdolls, but this was at the time where Dope was recording our second record,
Hmm.
which was really important. And from the way that I looked at it, I was like, well, the guy from Slipknot, the biggest band in the world, he's not going to make his side project a priority.
Yeah.
So it would be in my best interest to make my priority a priority right now. So, I was kind of on Joey's radar with this project, and the guitar player that he had didn't work out, and he had a tour booked. And at the time, he it was only going to be 2 weeks in the U.S., 2 weeks in Europe, and I'd never been there, and 2 shows in Japan opening for Guns N' Roses. And so I didn't want to jump ship with Dope, but it felt like, it was a little bit of an ultimatum of like, well, we need you now while the ship's sinking, which I get it. I understand that, but I felt like, well, I don't want to jump off the ship, but I don't know when there's going to be another opportunity like this. And so I want to take a couple months off to go and do this other thing. And then Joey was going to go back to do the next Slipknot record.
Yeah.
But that's not what happened. Joey ended up putting a bigger commitment to the Murderdolls than any of us ever expected. So that's kind of how it happened. Yeah.
Well, that band was successful. I mean, people seem to really latch onto it.
The Murderdolls?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, not out of the gate. It was really weird. And this is one place where I cannot give Joey enough credit. Joey was a true artist, 100% through and through artist. And integrity was something that was very, very, very important to him. And I'll never forget, we went to do the first US tour, and Roadrunner US were like, this record is horrible. We think this band sucks. and we are shelving this record. And Joey said, all right, well, I think it's awesome. I think it's cool. And so I want to do this tour. And they're like, well, just so you know, we're going to do everything we can to block the success of this project. And fortunately for us, two things. Number one, Joey's vision, number one. But number two, we took off in Europe. And Roadrunner Europe was like, hey, man, we got checks coming in on this. You know what I mean? We'll gladly get behind this. And I think the other thing that happened at the same time was Stone Sour started to take off.
Yeah.
And it was like, well, we can't do anything without Corey anyway. So we might as well stay behind this. But yeah, Roadrunner was not behind that record at all. And Joey basically said, fuck you. I like it, and I'm going to do what I like. And there's a lot of people that didn't like Slipknot at first, and there's a lot of people that don't like this, and look at where Slipknot went,
Yeah, I mean, I think Murderdolls had that perception, of kind of like, for that world, the horror punk world, being like a super group kind of collective, which I think helped. And then that world is so driven by the visuals and the vibe and all that stuff, and that was so well conceived, kind of out the gate. And and I was, at that time I was touring a lot in the UK, in Europe, so I think maybe a lot of the way I perceived the band and its success was through that lens as well.
Yeah, and it was so funny because when we first toured the US, I remember people coming out to shows and being like, this doesn't sound anything like Slipknot. And like heading for the door. I mean, we did the first run we did, man, was pretty scary, like as far as like attendance and reaction and things like that. But it was weird because when we went to the UK and Europe, people went, oh my God, this doesn't sound anything like Slipknot. Wow, how cool is that? It's like, you already got one serving of chocolate ice cream. You don't need two. You need some vanilla ice cream or strawberry,
Yeah, well, I wonder if it would have been different in the streaming age where, you could just check something out. It's like going to see a trailer for a movie, right? You kind of know what you're getting into, more or less, I would think, whereas maybe some people just went sight unseen, right?
Yeah, 100%. They just saw Joey's name and were like, him being, one of the most popular guys in the band and the founder of the band, of course, they're like, oh, this has got to be more of what we're looking for. But
Yeah.
it wasn't. It was something else, you know?
So I have a question kind of related. I guess maybe this, I don't know if this applies to dope, but you kind of use the word debauchery, or at least in terms of their reputation. And I know, some of the stuff with Joey, and Murderdolls as well. What was it like being kind of the sober guy in these environments that were probably could be pretty wild, especially during
Well, they
that
were
time?
insane.
Yeah.
You know, the funny thing about the Murderdolls too was that, as far as we knew, we were doing 2 weeks in the U.S., 2 weeks in 3 weeks in Europe and the UK, and then these 2 shows in Japan. So the way that we treated it was like a party. Do you know what I mean? It was like,
Going
hey,
for
like, what's that?
Going for it. It's like, hey, we're not gonna be around forever, so might as well just get the most out of it.
Yeah, and so we really lived it up, and for me it was a lot of fun because in dope, like I said, we were very serious about everything that we did, and so it was kind of a nice change to be like around a bunch of guys who didn't really take it seriously. And I think that was the appeal to a lot of people, is the authenticity of it, you know
Sure.
what I mean? But as a sober guy, it wasn't hard, because for me it was like, wow, like not a lot of guys get to do this once, which I did with dope, but now I'm getting to do it a second time.
Yeah.
And even fewer people get to do it a second time. So it wasn't really that hard for me. And also, I mean, for me, it was always the thing of like, I loved being around everybody going crazy and losing their mind and all that shit. And then the next morning, waking up at 10 or 10:30 and just seeing everybody nursing their headaches and bad moods and hungover. And I'd be like, cool, like I'm going to go get a cappuccino and see what it looks like in Berlin, because I've never been here before. So I'll be back in 2 hours, So
Yeah.
I felt like I got the best of both worlds,
Yeah. Well, I mean, but there is a tolerance, because there's situations in bands where there'll be like the sober bus and the party bus, because some people, it can be triggering, or it can be just, some, drunk people can be annoying or they can be like abusive or whatever. There's a lot of, kind of downsides that can come from that are, very hard to contain.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially in a little box, like a tour bus or a van or something,
Yeah. But you got to remember, at that point we were youngish,
Sure.
And so I think that separation of party bus and sober bus, first of all, I mean, I was the only sober guy, so it wasn't like they're going to get a separate bus for me, and we couldn't afford that anyway. But yeah, I always knew that was like an occupational hazard. And I always looked at it like, hey man, like, what life was like when you were using, and it didn't include a music career. So I kind of always had an agreement with myself that if I ever picked up, or if I ever used, that I'd have to go back to rehab. And I guess I'd be back to that shipping and receiving guy again, I didn't want to go back to that shipping and receiving guy.
I hear that.
Yeah.
So Murderdolls goes for a couple years, and then I imagine it winds up naturally just because Slipknot kind of gets back to business. Is that what happened?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
What was your next move?
I put together, I toured for Amen for a couple months, but I was already putting together a band called Trashlight Vision, which was my own band. This was my band. And so I toured with Amen. I did the Roadrunner United record with Joey. And I did my band Trashlight Vision, which I'm extremely proud of. That band was a real band, and we worked really hard, but unfortunately it didn't go anywhere. There's no guarantees,
I was looking up songs on the internet. I couldn't find anything on Spotify.
Yeah, I had it taken down because I had somebody that was distributing it, and I wasn't happy with what they did. And I was lucky enough that they kind of gave the record back to me. So I think I want to do a vinyl release of that record. So I kind of intentionally have taken everything down for the time being.
Well, I hope it resurrects. I checked out some of the your other band, Acey Slade and the Dark Party, and that stuff sounds really cool. In that,
Thank you. Thank you.
But what did you find being the difference between kind of, I call it I froze up here? What's going on? Like I'm frozen up over here. Anyway, it'll hopefully work itself out. Are you seeing me move, or am I frozen on your end too?
No, you're good on my end.
All right, cool. It's just my monitoring. How did you experience the difference between kind of being a part of a project where you weren't necessarily running it and you were kind of a part of someone else's show, as opposed to starting something where you're at the forefront and you're running it and maybe writing and kind of, did you, was that more challenging? Was it more comfortable? Was it something you felt the need that you had to kind of approach at some point eventually anyway?
Yeah, and I felt like, at that time there was plans for us to do a second Murderdolls record. Mm-hmm. So I kind of felt like, hey, like I still have my band that has a record deal and does all that stuff. But yeah, Joey was going back to Slipknot, so he was going to have his hands tied with that for a few years. So it just seemed like, well, if I'm going to try to do my own thing, now is the time. And I mean, success is like a matter of perception, isn't it? Like, we toured the States a bunch. We toured the UK relentlessly. We toured Europe a couple times. We went to Japan, and we did all that as an independent band. Mm-hmm. We never had a major label behind us. We didn't even have like really the independent labels that were behind us. Their idea of an advance was like, here's 1,000 free CDs for you to sell, but we made it work. And so while that band didn't really have the commercial success that my other bands had, I'm so proud of the success that we did do, because we did it ourselves,
Yeah. Yeah. And how long, because we can go through like each of your next projects, and because you played with so many different people, and and had success in different realms. Was your goal at that point, I mean, because I think there's some people who go, I want to do my thing, I want to be the primary songwriter, or I want to, mm-hmm. It's not, success isn't success unless it is my thing, right? For certain people.
Oh, gotcha.
Where some people fall, and I think me and you are kind of similar in this, where we just end up being kind of the hired gun type guy for a multitude of reasons, right? Because like people think we're good at it, and you just kind of get hired for that stuff, or it's just something where for some people that's actually more appealing, because you don't have the pressure, right, of having to like be the one to promote it or make it happen. And some people just like the idea of like, you know what, I show up, I do my job, and that works for me. Did you have an idea of like what pathway was more comfortable for you, or did you just kind of take things as they came?
I think I took it as they came, but it's like I always liked writing, but in that band in particular, I mean, I always liked the idea of a band. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And one of the things that I definitely learned from being in that band in particular is, in a band, like, everybody wants 100% of the attention, right?
What do you mean?
Like, I think that there's nobody, especially like, I mean, it's a little different for you and I, because we're in more professional situations. So like, like when you did the Ice Nine Kills gig, like you knew that Spencer was getting all the attention. You know what I mean? So there's never any question about that.
Well, not only do I know that, I think there's actually an art to, I look at it like you're getting hired on a movie and you're a supporting mm-hmm. role. And part of, I think, your job is actually making sure that the star gets, is flourishing. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying?
Yeah,
Like
totally.
I feel like it's my job to support them so that their job is easier, that they look better, and that it's not my role. Like with Bad Wolves, I think it's more egalitarian, where it's like I'm kind of my own guy, and it's like I get a big guitar solo. Like it's kind of cool for me to get out there and look like the cool guy. That was not my role in Einstein Kills. I am part of a
Right.
collective, and it's not about me at all. Like
Right.
and I'm not saying I'm invisible, but it's also like, no, I'm here. Like it's his band. He runs the show. And then, and as long as like, I feel like, and by the way, it's never like he said that to me, right? Like he's like, hey, let me tell you what's up, what you need to do. I think these are part of the reasons why someone like myself or yourself gets some of these gigs, is that you have enough experience to understand these things intrinsically, right? You come in and you go, okay, I know how to do that. And then each gig you learn more and more. But it's something where it's like, like even little things like how to move on stage, right?
Yeah.
Like how to like, okay, so Spencer kind of like stalks the front of the stage, and then he'll like, and then I know just to make sure to recede to the background so that so I don't like bump into him. Like something that's just so stupid as that. But some guys, they don't even think about it. They just like, they don't realize that it's like, get the fuck out of the way. Like let the guy be the front man,
Yeah. And you keep learning. Like, it's funny. I mean, and everybody's kind of different. Like, I'll never forget one time, like when I was playing with Joan, like after a gig one time, someone's like, hey, dude. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, don't throw guitar picks out while Joan's doing her raps. And it never occurred to me. I was like, okay, I see that. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Like to some front people, that's a distraction. You know what I mean? And I mean, it took me like in Dope, that was never a big deal. Murderdolls, it was never a big deal. But for some artists, that is. So that skill of like, I wasn't trying to steal anybody's attention.
Sure.
I was just throwing a guitar pick out,
Yep.
And you have to learn that etiquette. And that etiquette, man, takes time. Sure.
Yeah, and everyone's different, right? Every situation is different, and something that is okay in one environment is not okay in another environment. And it's but I think being that role, like if you or I had some like outsized ego, we'd be like, don't you know who I am? I could throw, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, some people will think that. They'll just like, don't you know, and it's like, and once you kind of throw that out of the way and just realize, it is a job, right? And someone is paying your check, and it's like, it's not your name on the company, and you're not, you, especially something like that, right? It's Joan Jett.
Yeah.
We know who they're there to see, right?
Yeah. Totally.
Something like that. And I think it's there's only a handful of these jobs out there.
Yeah.
They're right of like decent paying, professional, where like, you can be paid relatively well and you're existing fairly comfortably. It's the job. I always say like you do one of these big shows or big tours, and there's a lot of people working in that building, right? There's lighting people and vendors and drivers and just a million people like that. I feel like are working 100 times harder than I am, and by the way, a lot of them are making way more than we're making, right? As the guys playing in the band, but I go, you know what? But this is, out of all the jobs, this is the one I would want.
Yeah,
it's the one
that's a very good point.
Even if I was making twice as much to be the guitar tech, I'd rather have this one. It's more gratifying to me, and so there's kind of like a thing of like, hey man, like no matter what, you're always lucky to be in that position. So and try to always remember that.
Do you know who Chris Bosh is?
I'm not sure. You mean the basketball player?
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, he wrote a fantastic book that basically talks about, I think he's got like three championship rings and like 4 MVPs, and like
not
when
MVP,
you look at his
MVPs. So I'm a big NBA guy, so I know a lot about. But he was like a multiple time All-Star. He won 3 championships with or 2 championships with the Miami Heat, and but he's a really smart guy. Like he went to school for like coding, and like he's a really like intelligent guy.
Did you read his book by chance?
I didn't, but now you brought it up, I feel like I want to go check it out.
Oh man, I mean, it's so much. It talks about like how, like what was the big team where it was like they had Kobe Bryant, LeBron James.
No, so basically it was kind of they were like, it was LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and him, and
Yes,
basically, and by the way, and I make sports analogies to bands all the time, especially with basketball, because basketball is it is like all about the team, right? It's all about sharing, but also roles. And what he had to do, he went from a situation where he was the main guy, he was the go-to guy, the all-star, making the big money at the end of the game, and all the attention was on him, and he had to voluntarily become the third, the third in pecking order, and he had to sacrifice more than those other guys. And but it worked, right? It was because he was able to sacrifice and find a role that worked for him. They won, and that takes a certain type of personality. Not everyone can do that. Not everyone can be humble enough or go like, I'm going to sacrifice something or not get the shine or not get, that takes, that I think that's a credit to him, it really is.
Yeah. And I think that's something that, as the hired gun, it's like that's what we need to keep in mind. It's like, your asset. Like in dope, I always felt like I learned that a lot. That like my excuse me, my asset was that like I'm here to be part of that foundation. That foundation's really, really important because without the foundation, it's like Aerosmith's a great example. It's like there's only room for one Joe Perry and one Steven Tyler. But boy, if you don't have the other three guys behind it, it doesn't matter. And guess what? Brad Whitford plays a lot of the solos that people think Joe plays anyway. You know what I mean? So you sort of need to be prepared for that. Like, hey, do you want to be an Aerosmith where you're one of the foundation guys, or do you want to be in I don't want to say any other bands because I don't want to make it seem like I'm speaking poorly of another band. But do you want to be playing the clubs as one of the upfront guys, or do you want to be playing the arenas as a support guy?
Sure. Listen, and another analogy is like sometimes in sports you have these situations where they get like an all-star team, right? So it's 5, 6, 7, 8 number one guys, and on paper it goes, oh yeah, this will work, but it doesn't work because there's not enough to go around for the people to feel like they have enough, and I think having people fit certain roles, right? Like you can't have 5 type A personalities trying to run the band or trying to be the visionary, right? Like there needs to be somewhat of a pecking order. And to me, it's like every role is fine as long as you treat everyone with respect, right? Like as long as you're like, if there's someone who is not maybe at the forefront, but don't treat them like they're, like they're less than you. Don't treat, like, and there are situations where I've been in situations like that, and I'm sure you've experienced that, where someone goes, just because you're not the front person or you're not the secondary person, that you're like, treat you like dirt. And that's, to me, is like terrible. That, that's something that, you have to kind of stand up for yourself in those situations and go, hey, you know what? I don't mind being a, supporting member, but I also have dignity,
Yeah. It's a very good way of wording it. Yeah.
But enough about Chris Bosh. Great player, Hall of Fame player. Actually, no, he had to retire because he had like a heart issue.
Yeah.
He had to retire early. It was really, really unfortunate because he had a lot of good years ahead of him. But shout out to Chris Bosh. And what's the name of that book?
Chris Bosh is called Letters to a Young Athlete.
Letters to a Young Athlete. All right, check it out.
Yeah, if you're I think if you're a musician or an artist, it's a great book to read.
That's great. Sure. Awesome. Thank you for that recommendation. So where we were kind of at, where we went on this tangent, we were kind of talking about your kind of career in the mid 2000s going into kind of the 2010s. And you
Yeah.
mentioned Joan Jett. Is that around that? Actually, did you end up playing with the Wednesday 13 band as well?
For a hot minute,
Yeah.
I filled in on a tour. He broke his arm, so I went
Gotcha.
back and filled in for him for a U.S. tour and a European tour.
Gotcha. But in terms of like gigs, like, you know, that extensively, what the next one was, like Joan Jett was the next like kind of big
Yeah,
one.
yeah,
And how did you fall
yeah.
into that?
You know, I got to tell you, 9 times out of 10, I think that um, you kind of create your own success. You
Sure.
know, and in that case, I do got to say, fucking luck, man, total luck. I was, I I had worked in a music marketing firm for a while and concrete marketing, which you probably remember.
Hmm.
Worked for them. They went out of business. The music business was in the shitter. Started working at this like rock and roll clothing store in Soho. And the girl I worked with, her husband was the drummer for Joan. And she just called me up one day and said, you know, like, hey, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know, nothing. She's like, all right, learn 3 Joan Jett songs. Your rehearsal is on Thursday. This was like on a Monday. Your rehearsal is on Thursday. If you nail it, the first date is this date, and then you're going to Australia. And I was like, what the fuck just happened? Like that came out of the blue. I had not tried to get that gig at all. I didn't even think it was available. You know, wasn't something it just fell out of the sky and landed in my lap. So I went to the audition, nailed it. And a couple weeks later, we're going to Australia.
Now, do you play guitar in Joan Jett or bass?
Bass.
So what is, you know, and you'll play guitar or bass in different projects depending on what it is. What's your what instrument do you feel most comfortable with?
Well, I'm definitely a way better bass player than I am a guitar player, but you know, there's just something about hitting an open E chord on a guitar that just you don't get on a bass. You know what I mean? It's just not the same. You know?
Yeah.
So
Listen.
so yeah, but I'm definitely a way better bass player, and you know, if I'm looking for work, I'm usually looking for bass player work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I almost feel like guitar players were like a dime a dozen. You could like, you know, rattle a tree and a couple guitar players are going to fall out of it. So I feel like if you're a good bass player and like I would say for like, if you want to get a gig, play bass and sing background harmonies and look cool.
Exactly.
And that'll like, and if you, especially I feel like the combination of like, you can sing, you look cool, and being sober and being a nice guy, because when you're sober, there's a lot of bands, like especially like legacy acts that have been around for a long time, where maybe multiple members are sober and they just like, that's just their camp, or they just basically like, they hire sober people because that's the environment they want.
Yeah.
So that'll kind of open up a lot of opportunities, I've noticed for people. But it's also like, even if the camp that's not what it is, they at least know that you're not going to be some crazy psycho who's out till, you know, the middle of the night getting in bar fights, and that gives you an advantage as well.
Yeah. Totally.
So this clearly is like a different kind of environment that you've probably been in before. What is that like? You know, I mean, she's one of the legends of all time, you know, one of the most respected people in music history, rock and roll history. What has that been like? Just kind of just being in that environment and getting to know her and learn her and play the music and all that.
Well, I got to tell you, you know, one of the first things that really surprised me, and I mention this because a lot of musicians watch this, and specifically probably guitar players. The one thing I did not expect, man, we did that first rehearsal and she hit a chord, and, you know, it sounded like Joan Jett. Like I thought it was going to be in her voice, which of course it is. But man, I tell you, as far as a guitar player goes, tone wise, she really has her own thing going on, and I mean that in a great way. Like getting a distinguishable trademark tone that's pleasing is really really hard. And
Yeah.
boy, she's got it, man. Like the first time she hit a chord, I was like, ah, yeah, I didn't expect this. Cool, man. So props to Joan for just having, and she's really particular about her gear and what she'll use. And
Yeah.
people don't give her enough credit for that at all. It's always like, she's the front runner of woman rockers. It's like, well, okay, there's that. But number one, she knows what a guitar is supposed to sound like. And number two, she never had voice problems ever. Always had her voice always held up. There's one time we did a gig in um, Salt Lake, and it was like in the desert. And I remember in between songs, she came over. She's like, I can't. My mouth is so dry. And like fourth song, I sang a lot of backing vocals, and yeah, it was like I couldn't sing, you
Yeah.
know. So it wasn't just her. It was like it just. But I was with her for 5 years. She never had a voice problem. So.
Yeah.
But I'll never forget probably one of my favorite things about that gig was I was doing like the third or fourth show, and I would still, and like to this day, I always like, before I go on, kind of look out like, hey, let's see who's here, you know? I mean, with Dope, when I do gigs with Dope, it's not a given that the place is going to be full. We still got to earn it every night, you
Sure.
know? And with Joan, it was like third or fourth night, there were still 3,000 to 5,000 people there every night. And I was like, I don't think I got to look out behind the curtain anymore. Like the people are going to turn up. Like I don't got to worry about that shit anymore. Like this isn't my problem anymore.
It's nice.
You know?
It's a nice thing.
Which is a really good feeling.
Yes. Yeah. Trust me. I feel like it's the thing that can be like if you're in a band that's trying to make your way, you're struggling, especially if it's your band, where it's like, if the band isn't doing well enough financially, there kind of is no band because you can't afford to tour and do things like that. And it's like that kind of anxiety once you get to a band that's at a cruising altitude that it's like, we're pretty good. It's a nice weight to have off your shoulders.
Yeah, totally. Especially after like having my own band, and it's like playing Don Hills or playing the Continental, and like, like looking out like,
rest in peace, man. Rest in peace.
I called everybody, I texted everybody, I sent out my mailing list. Like, why isn't there anybody here? And, the guys in your band are like, no, man, it's packed. It's good. It's like, yeah, but you're not seeing the little holes in the crowd that I'm seeing, so.
Yeah. We always have that thing, man. It's, man. So I'm getting anxiety just thinking about it.
Yeah.
So you played with Joan for you said like 5 years?
Yeah, 5 years. And the other thing about it too that was very surprising, I guess, was that we flew everywhere.
Yeah.
We were only in a bus like once, and initially I thought that was really cool, and I learned to hate that.
It's the worst.
After about a year of just because it would be like
it beats you up. Somewhere. It beats you up, man. Beats up your body.
It beats you up so bad, and it'd be like, shit, man. Like we could have gotten in a van and driven. The bad example would be like Boston. Like, all right, we got to fly to Boston. It's like, all right, well, it's an hour to get there. We got to get there 2 hours early. Then, by the time you get your bags, all that shit, it's like, man, we could have just driven there.
Yeah.
No, that was hard.
Me. Yeah, I think it really depends also to how much gear you have, because like Bad Wolves, we would do like I think we actually, one of the shows you might have played actually with Joan Jett, one of those like radio festivals. I think we did one with you guys, and it's like, a band like us, it's like we have like in-ear rigs and all these racks, and you're in the airport and you're like carrying all this crap, and it's one thing if you just have like, oh, I got my one kind of gig bag and I'm good, but when you have just like tons of amps and little things, and it just takes it out of you, and then you're by the time you like get from the airport to the hotel and then you go like you're barely sleeping. It's
Yeah.
it's probably one of my least favorite ways to do shows. I'd always rather, if I'm gonna do a festival, I'd rather wrap it into a tour where at least you have a vehicle and you can have somewhere to go. It's so you guys weren't touring. Normally it was more like one-offs and festivals and weekends, things like that.
Yeah, it was like we would do about 70 gigs a year. And
That's a lot.
Yeah. I mean, 50 to 70 gigs a year, and sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less. And it was everything, like I didn't know about corporate events, which of course you know about from the wedding band. It was everything from like we did corporate events for GNC Vitamins, and then a week later we're on a private 747 with the Foo Fighters touring South America, and then we get home and we're playing a state fair, or then it's another corporate event for some lawyer that's got $100,000 to play with, or whatever Joan's guarantee was. So it's just, you never knew from one week to the next what we were going to be doing. It was always an adventure, though. That's for sure.
Yeah, but I think that's great experience, and it kind of speaks to the blue collar nature that I don't think people really understand. They have this idea of what a rock star lifestyle is, and it's just, sometimes it's like I said, it's a fun job and it's great, but guess what? It's sometimes just a lot of work, and it's not everyone's built for it, so some people that's like, flying every weekend to go, even if you're going to South America, you're doing these cool things, that just that feels very not unstable for some people, just that kind of that movement. So it's like, it is a thing. Either you vibe with that or you don't, but it's just kind of realizing like it's a job and this is the work. This is what it is.
Yeah. And your job is to be able to kind of like travel.
Yeah. So did you stop playing with Joan Jett? Did that have to do with rejoining Dope, or is that having to do with the Misfits opportunity coming your way?
No, it just ran its course. The day I walked in, somebody told me, our sound guy was like, I'll never forget, talk about your blood turn into ice, like I was nervous, but I felt pretty confident. Like when I went in, I was like, all right, cool. Like, you're getting your game head on, and the monitor guy's there and he goes, oh yeah. So you're the new bass player. He said something like, you're bass player number 478. And I tried to sound confident. I'm like, yeah, well, maybe this is it. Maybe this is the end of the road. And he puts his hand on my shoulder and he goes, dude, if I were you, I would leave right now, because nobody lasts in the bass player position in this band, and you will get fired, and you seem like a nice guy, but you're going to get fired. So you should just leave right now. And that was
Jesus Christ.
Before I hit a single note, but so the fact that I was in that band for 5 years and all the things that we did, got the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction, not because of me.
Sure.
She built the house. That's not me taking credit, but I was in the band while that happened. And so all those experiences were really amazing, and I'm still friends with her. Yeah. We text each other periodically, stuff like that. So yeah, it just kind of ran its course, this time.
I feel like plus that world, you probably get to see a whole different side of the music industry you probably didn't realize was there. It's like where the grown-ups are at,
Totally, dude. Totally. It really is. It's like you see, that's a good way of explaining it. Like, it's like, these are people that it's like they're on a what's the word I want? They're on like a platform that's different than like, and if this isn't to sound ungrateful or anything, but I missed like a little bit of that, having fun. Like that gig wasn't necessarily fun. It was work, and it should be work. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that it shouldn't be, but I miss being able to joke with the drummer and be like, "Dude, you played like shit tonight," and then be like, "I know. What did I do? All right, bad night. All right, we'll like, man, in gigs like that, you have one bad night, and that is your last night. You know what
Wow.
I mean? I mean, she used Kenny Aronoff for one gig.
Yeah.
One. That's Kenny Aronoff, dude.
I know.
So I lasted 5 years. Kenny Aronoff lasted 1 year, so I did pretty good.
So it's more of a situation, not necessarily like it was an up, or you tell me it was an uptight situation, or it was more just the bar was so high that if things were not the way they need to be, you were out the door.
Little of both.
Yeah.
Little bit of both.
Gotcha. All right. Well,
Joan puts a lot of pressure on herself, and when the singer puts that pressure on themselves, they put it on the band too.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's it's every situation is different. I think you have situations like you look at like Paul McCartney's band, for example, and it's like it's the same dudes for like 20, 30 years, and different environments cultivate themselves in a different way. I heard like Trent Reznor is maybe not for, I don't know about the band, but like for crew and stuff like that, is like notorious for just like, you fuck up once, you're out the door. Like he does not care. There's certain environments, that they are what they are, and
sure.
So the big league.
Hey, and that's actually a great example. I mean, Adrian Blue, do you know who he is? He was like David Bowie's guitar player. He's like King Crimson, like dude, he's one of these guys that, like, if you handed him your Aero 7, he would make it do things. You'd be like, is that even my guitar? Like, what did you just do? And in 9 Inch Nails, he lasted 1 week. He was like, nope, you are not going to work in this environment. And he's probably like one of the best guitar players in the world, so.
Yeah. Well, sometimes it's not, it's not like the Olympics, right? Like who runs the fastest time. It's just about chemistry and fit and who works for what environment,
Yeah.
I've noticed.
Totally.
So you do go back to Dope eventually. What was the kind of impetus for kind of rejoining up with Edsel?
Well, he and I stayed for like, there was like a couple years where there was some some friction between us during the Murderdolls years, but that squelched pretty quickly. Like, after like 2 or 3 years, he and I buddied up again. I never, I maintained it then as I do now. Like, if it wasn't for him, you and I wouldn't be having this conversation. And I was always very aware of that. So even when we had those couple of years where there was friction between us, I was still always grateful. You know what I mean? I was still always like, well, it's a shame that's the way it is, but that's the way it is. So it wasn't really, it just happened naturally. He needed a guitar player for a gig, like a string of shows. And I had a hole in my schedule with Joan, and he's like, you want to come out and do a couple shows? I was like, man, I would love to do that. I'd really like that. And so I did a couple shows, and then after that, it was always just like, all right, cool. Like, we're cool now. So, and that was like, I think 2016, maybe 2014. That was probably like 2014. And then we did like a reunion tour where it was the lineup from the Life record. And yeah, so it's been cool ever since. And I'm very fortunate to have a situation where I can say to the band, like, hey, like, I got Misfits shows, or I've got this. And I think that as long as whatever this other thing is seems reasonable, then nobody really cares. It's like there's this third leg to the Dope Static X Seven Dust tour. And I'm like, hey, listen, like, I can't do this third leg because, number one, I'm trying to open my coffee shop. But number two, I do have Misfits shows. So there's 2 Misfits shows. I could probably swing it, but it would be me flying in and out. And that's what's like, no, man, no, it's cool. Like, we'll cover it, and everything will be fine. And kick ass on opening your coffee shop and all that. So Yeah, I'm very lucky to have that because not a lot of people do, you know?
Yeah, I kind of wish more bands would be like that, where if, I think there's a certain echelon of bands where they're just like, they're out all the time and that's the main thing people do and that's how they pay their bills. But most bands aren't really like that. It's like you kind of have your busy times, you have times when it's a little slower, and just having people that can kind of fill the gaps just in
Yeah,
case, I think just makes, if you can have people that are reliable, um, it's not that big of a deal. It doesn't mean like, hey, well, because I'm not playing with the band that I'm angry at anyone or there's an issue. It's just, hey, I couldn't do this one and someone's helped me out, and till next time. I
sure.
actually like that a lot.
Well, and also it's like, depending on, and like I said, if it seems reasonable, like I don't know, like let's just say if it was like maybe if a tour was booked and I don't know, I can't think of it again. I don't want to badmouth anybody, but let's just say it was like some smaller band or something. It'd be like, hey man, like come on, like this, you give this the dignity it deserves, meaning dope. Then that might be a different situation. But even like with opening my coffee shop, it's like Etzel gets that it's like, well, the more successful my coffee shop is, the more time in a way I'll be able to devote to dope. Like that's kind of it's a means to an end. So yeah.
Sure, and it's great that he understands that, and I think I'm just of the mind like, obviously if we're trying to get a band off the ground and we want people to be loyal and we want consistency is great for any band, right? Like those bands where it's the same people, that's super helpful. But I'm also of the mind of like, no matter what band I'm in, I want the people in that band to be doing the best.
Yeah.
Like I would, like if anyone in any band I'm in, if they got some opportunity to play in some massive act, I'd be like, go do it right now. Like I'll punch you
Yeah.
if you don't go do that, even if it hurts my band, because we're part of a collective, but we're also individuals, right? Like we all have
Sure.
our own dreams, our own, like, and I just want people to do well. Like I don't like
Yeah.
if this collective is holding you back, I don't want to hold you back. Go be your best version of yourself and go do that amazing thing. Cause ultimately I think that's also like kind of sharing the abundance and not seeing things as like scarcity mentality or like
Totally.
jealousy or trying to keep, like, oh, you, if I can't have you, no one can, kind of like that. I think that's terrible.
Yeah. And on top of it too, it's like it's a lot smarter because it's like, for example, your situation with Ice Nine, it's like, okay, well, you go and you play with Ice Nine, you form a good relationship there. They got a new tour coming up, and it's like, oh, like, and now Doc's back in Bad Wolves because our guy came back or whatever. It's like, oh, Bad Wolves are up, yeah, fucking Doc was awesome. Let's bring them out. Like
Yeah.
nepotism goes a long way. Whereas like if the primary of the band is like, dude, fuck you, it's your band or my band,
Yeah.
and then you're gonna go do it anyway because nobody responds very well to ultimatums anyway. Um, you go and you do it anyway, and then there's weirdness with this other band. Well, you just shot the primary of that other band just shot themselves in the foot.
Yeah. And I also, even from that perspective, like I was like, well, listen, if I go play with these guys and I get more exposure and more people know who
Yeah,
Doc Coyle is, maybe we just made that many more Bad Wolves fans because now they discovered Bad Wolves because I played with that band. It's like,
yeah,
I'm like, you want everyone in the band to have a high as a profile as they can, because that will
yeah,
bring more people to what you're doing. So I agree. I think it's a win-win. And it's also, I just think it's tough for most of us to make a living just from doing one band. You kind of,
totally.
because it's like, maybe a band will have an album cycle to be a year, but then they don't, that's it. They're not touring the next year or two. And then you got
Yeah,
to figure out how to, and then the checks stop coming in. All right. How do I fill those gaps? And we all have to be pretty ambidextrous career
yeah,
wise. And like you said, I feel like you're always, if it's not coffee, it's like you're into this and you're doing that. You're always like doing multiple things. Um, I'm sure not only just for business reasons, but because you're interested in multiple things, right? You're not just a
yeah,
one-dimensional individual.
yeah,
You have other interests outside of just playing guitar, bass in a band.
yeah. I'm pretty lucky in that I think at this point in my life, like I don't think I'm ever gonna do something I don't want to do. You
Yeah,
know, I kind of think I'll at this point, hopefully in my life, I'll always be working for myself. And I mean, like, as a hired gun, I still feel like I'm kind of working for myself, if you know what I
sure.
mean.
Oh
I'm
yeah, I
still
mean,
still a freelancer, you know.
yeah, absolutely. And you're, you know, it's not like you've ever done anything and people go, "Oh, that's a corny gig." It's like, no, it's like they're all really cool.
Those have been well hidden.
Yeah. Oh well, maybe. All right. I don't know about those. Well, we're gonna
They've been
find.
well hidden.
You've been
Yeah. And
scrubbed from the internet.
fortunately, we're before the digital age. I did some dumb shit.
Well, but yes, but what I'm saying is, as we kind of ascend and move up, we can be pickier with our choices.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know. So and that kind of brings us to this, I guess, most recent chapter, and the biggest chapter in terms of opportunities, and that's you playing with the Misfits, and that's just like when I heard that, man, I was just so pumped, man. I love it when my people I'm friends with, people I know who work hard and are humble and talented, and just people who I feel like are doing this for the right reasons, which is just they love it. At the end of the day, I say it's like any job where you get paid to do something you would do for free is like very, very cool. And so and by that I mean, I think people like you and myself, that even if we weren't getting paid, we'd have, like I said, you have your own solo band and you'd be doing things, you'd be making things because you just love it. And so when I saw that happen, I was just like, man, I'm like, there is justice in this world.
Thank you.
And that's just amazing. I'm just really, really happy for it. And I'm happy that it's still continuing, and there's more shows and opportunities. And like, so what was that just like you just happened to be in Jersey, or were you still in Brooklyn, I guess, when all this went down?
Well, it's one of those things I can't really discuss it a whole lot.
Okay.
But
all right.
But I was friends with Jerry. I was friends with Glenn, and it just so happens that when my name came up, everybody knew who I was. So it was kind of as simple as that. Yeah.
All right. Well, it's but I gotta ask this. So I got to play with Dave Lombardo once.
Yes.
All right. We got to play a Suicidal Tendencies song. It was really sick. But love Dave, great guy. But what's it like playing with Dave Lombardo? You gotta give me some Dave juice. Come on.
Oh man. So first of all, he's just the best human being on the planet. Like he's just so humble and so cool. And he's the consummate artist, not just musician, not just drummer, but artist. Like he really, man, I feel like when I'm playing with him, I'm watching, what's the painter's name? Not Bob Vila. The
Bob
other guy.
Ross. Bob Ross.
Yeah. Like he's just like painting with his drums. Do you know what I mean? Even though
I know.
it's everyone's like thinks that he's like this metal god, and he is. But oh my god, that's like putting him in such a small hole. Do you know what I mean? That guy can play anything and does play anything. And probably some of my favorite moments with that gig are just like, you know how it is, man. It's like everybody setting their kid up and line checking, and Dave will just kind of like hitting something. And I'm like, all right, play a little something. All of a sudden we got like a jam going. And then everybody in the room's like, "You guys fucking stop, please." I'm like, all right, okay.
Yeah, well, that's listen, I've been there. I've had the good fortune to play with very amazing, talented people that I probably don't deserve to play with. So I definitely know what that's like. But I mean, probably of anything, I imagine this must be the most surreal in terms of, not only are you performing with figures who in and of themselves are iconic, but you're doing these like larger than life festivals. I mean, 100,000 people or whatever it is. And these songs, man, these songs that are so kind of ingrained in our souls, right? As like in terms of, being rock and punk fans. And I'm not even like, I didn't grow up on Misfits, but they're one of those bands that like, even if you didn't realize you knew the songs, you knew the song. Like it's like, pervasive in our in the culture. So that must be just a wild spot to be in, and just like, you know, I don't know, like I can almost imagine, but I also can't imagine, you know, this, well, you know,
Yeah.
and that must be a very, very um just invigorating experience.
Yeah. I am very, very fortunate, very lucky.
Right on. Do you think that'll be something that will continue, or kind of just like it just, they let you know when something's happening until the next time, you just kind of just keep it on the back burner?
Yeah. Yeah. Basically that's it. I mean, it's Glenn and Jerry's house, and I'm just crashing on the couch, you know.
Right on. Well, that's, listen, it's amazing. It's impressive. I'm happy for you, and I'm sure it won't be the last cool thing that you get to do. I'm sure more cool things are happening. And are you still doing Acey Slade and the Dark Party?
No, you know, I haven't been working on my own music that much lately.
Yeah.
I did a solo record with Jerry only.
Mm.
Um, last year before, which was so much fun. That was really, really great. Um, but yeah, I haven't been working on my own stuff, and I'm getting the itch. You
Yeah.
know, I'm starting to get the itch, and you know, it's like I kind of. Oh, I feel like I'm finally at a place where I could do something that, you know, I'm a little bit of a punk guy, I'm a little bit of a metal guy, I'm a little bit industrial. Like, how do I blend it all together? Oddly, I feel like the world is kind of in a place where it would be a good time to do it. Like even bands like Bad Omens, it's like it's a little bit punky, it's a little bit industrial. You know, it's definitely metal. You know, not
Yeah.
that I would want to do something that sounds like anybody else, but I feel like the world could would digest some music that I would do now, you know. And so I have a few different ideas. Really, the main thing is like when we started this conversation and you were talking about uh, you know, contemporary marketing for music, you know, I do think of things as like, all right, well, what's my end game for this? Do you know what I mean? What do I plan to do with this? And and I'm exploring some alternative ideas because, you know, it's not the days like it was when I was coming up where you go to CMJ with your demo and hand it out. You know, it's really weird times, and that, you know, the responsibility for success is even, you have the tools for success more than you did back then, and that's
Hmm.
the upside. But the downside is that every single person has those tools now, you
Yeah.
know, so there's no filter. So yeah, so I'm just trying to figure it out. I think I got some pretty cool ideas that will reveal themselves.
Well, I'm sure a lot of your attention right now is going into this coffee shop, which is pretty, that's a, you know, that's a big venture in terms of, you know, like a physical brick and mortar shop.
Mm,
That's like, I mean, I'm sure there's the financial investment, the physical time and effort and work that's putting in something like that. I mean, that's quite an undertaking.
yeah, huge. I had no
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah, I mean, is that like a really risky thing? Like, if it doesn't work out, are you going to be kind of like owing someone a truckload of cash, or what?
No, not exactly, because one of the things that we were very fortunate about, which apparently the term for this is diversifying, which it was an accident. I didn't know that's what we were doing. But when we started the company, we started it as e-commerce only.
Mm,
And so we were only doing e-commerce. We've been successful with that. And that was during COVID, which is why we started it. And then as COVID started to open up, we started to do pop-up events like punk rock flea markets, oddities flea markets, horror conventions, record conventions, things that speak to our lifestyle.
yeah, I saw
Uh,
you at the
yeah,
horror,
yeah, yeah.
whatever, the what was that event called in LA?
LA
The,
Haunted Hayride.
yeah, that's where I saw you.
Yeah, yeah. So we have that as a revenue stream too. So we've got our e-commerce, we've got our pop-ups, and my wife has done a fantastic job at scaling our retail wholesale end. So the shop is kind of like another aspect of it. So yeah, I mean, I treat everything like everything is, you know, I don't want to say a priority. What's the word I want to use? I don't know. I'm kind of a maniac that way. Like, it's like, no, this has to succeed. This has
Yeah.
to do good, you know? And so if the shop doesn't do good, my ego will be harmed.
Yeah, but that's
but
a
as
tough.
a business,
Yeah, that's tough though. I mean, I've heard that you know, bars are one of the like the toughest businesses to succeed. And I know with like coffee and things like that, you have lower like margins, you know, because
oh yeah, yeah.
you're getting a cup of coffee for $3, $4, $5, $6, whatever it is, and so you have to get a lot of volume in order
Hmm.
to actually make it work. But I think at least the overhead isn't as much as as a bar or something or a restaurant.
No, no. And our overhead, we put the e-commerce business is actually in the basement of this business.
Gotcha,
So the
gotcha.
e-commerce business can sustain the shop regardless of what our foot traffic is. I mean, like I said, man, it's kind of weird. Like, opening the shop, there's a big part of it for me that wants to be able to give back to our metal and rock community. You know, I want, obviously, do I want it to succeed? Sure, of course. But do I want it, but would it make me really happy to have a place where I look over and there's, you know, some dude with his notebook out, like writing lyrics to one of his songs, and maybe like a guy over there is like they're having a meeting with a drummer that they might audition, you know what I mean? That to me is success. If I have a place that becomes a part of the story of people's lives, that's why I want to open the shop that I want to open, you know.
Are you gonna have a little spot in the back where like a punk rock band could play or something like that, or some poetry
No,
slams?
no, and I'll tell you why. Because I think bands are criminally fucking underpaid, and I
Yeah,
don't want to be a part of that shit. Because I also know that if you're a promoter, there's dollars and cents to it. You know, like, so if I was going to open a place that had bands, I'd probably want to overpay everybody, because
yeah.
I'd be like, you know, like a young band, like, well, I don't know what's good pay for a local band. I don't know, $500. I'd be like, no, man, like, let me give them seven, you know. And my wife'd be like, yeah, but they only brought, you know, 100 people, so really 500 is overpaying. And I'm like, no, but they had to pay for band practice and guitar strings and gas. So
Yeah,
I would be a terrible businessman in that sense.
I hear that. All right, but still, poetry slams, maybe.
Yeah, that would be cool. Yeah.
All
And
right.
right across the street from our shop is actually a theater. And so what I do plan to do is I do plan on putting on events in that theater.
Is it like a venue theater or like a movie theater?
That remains to be seen. So they closed it down and they're rebuilding it. It was a movie theater, and but also a theater for like stage. So it's got seats to it.
Gotcha.
And you know, we don't like seats at our rock shows, but it might be maybe they can be moved out. I'm not sure. I haven't put eyes on it yet, but the town's putting a couple million into rebuilding it, and it's
Wow.
right across the street from our coffee shop. So, and that was by design. So.
Well, listen, man. All this stuff sounds incredible. I am really happy for you and all the things you're pursuing and everything you're doing. It's wonderful to, you know, see from the outside looking in, and you know, you and I, we tend to just our paths cross here and there across the world, you know, every now and again. And it's always nice seeing you and just staying in touch, man. So I'm glad we could actually finally make this happen, because you have an amazing story, and people need to hear it.
Thank you. And you know, I was thinking about this, and I think we did play together once. Didn't
We
we
did.
do
It was
a
yeah.
gig at Pianos with
It
Tommy?
I don't. It wasn't at pianos. It was I want to say Tammany Hall.
That's right.
Yeah, it was a benefit show, like for Tim was doing
Tim
something,
37. That's
I
right. Yeah, yeah,
think.
yeah. I forgot about
And
that.
yeah, we did like an acoustic. We did like a Alice in Chains or something like that. I
That's
can't,
right.
you know.
That's right.
But yeah, that's how we met.
Yeah, yeah.
So that was it. We're
That's
looking at, that's like, I don't know, 15 years ago, something like that. Little maybe not. Yeah, like 14 years ago, something like that. Yeah.
Oh man, where does the time go?
It's a one-way trip, baby, but I'm happy to still be kicking over here, you know.
Amen.
Definitely, brother. All right, is there anything you want to promote? Anything else besides the coffee? or any places people can check you where you're at, anything you have going on?
Yeah, just on my socials, it's Acey Slade, and then Catfight Coffee on all the Catfight Coffee socials, and aceyslade.com. Greatest
Awesome.
coffee in the universe.
Greatest coffee. You heard it here first. I had Dave Ellison on here, so you guys have to fight over like the horror punk coffee versus the thrash metal coffee. Like, who wins?
Right.
All right, brother. Listen, have a great day. Stay in touch, and I will talk soon. All right.
Cool.
Cheers.
All right, man. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Doc.